Alrighty, hello to all. I'm here today in the Tier 8 British Premium Destroyer, the HMS Cossack, a Tier 8 Tribal Class Destroyer. We're on the map Greece, the mode is Domination, and we're in 7 to 9 matchmaking, so we are mid-tier. When you're playing destroyers, first thing to look at is your destroyer counterparts. So I have a Yugamo, 5.5 detection, same as my own 5.5 detection. Cossack B, which is just a black version of my ship, which is kind of the reason why we're visiting this ship in the first place. 5.5 as well. The Terrible, which is dived with the Cossack, it's important to remember. At 6.6, so outspot. And a Highland, which sits at about, I think it's 6.8. So of these, I match 2 and then I beat the 2 Frenchies fairly handily. After that, as a destroyer, it's important to look for radars. There's only one on the enemy team. There's an Atlanta, but there's also a Brindisi with those Italian semi-armor piercing shells, which can deal very large sums of damage. Now, the Cossack is not particularly new. As a destroyer, it actually, I believe, predates the actual British line, having released somewhat alongside it. As a travel class destroyer, it has 8 rifles in 4 twin turrets, 2 forward and 2 aft, in a super firing layout. These are 100 and I believe these are 120s, so the 4.7-inch weapons. You can see my forward angles are quite good for 3 of the 4 turrets, but that last turret does require me to bring a lot of broadside to bear. Overall though, with 8 rifles and a 4.5 second reload, along with standard HE alpha, no reduced alpha or anything like that, the Cossack has a formidable anti-destroyer broadside. Now 120s can't penetrate cruiser or battleship plating, that's not really what the Cossack is about. Really, the Cossack is a ship that's all about leveraging its good concealment, just like my techtree counterpart, the Lightning, as well as, in this case, very good firepower. The Lightning has good firepower, and the Cossack has even more emphasis on gunpower. In exchange for sacrificing torpedo power, Highland pops up at 8.4. However, British destroyer shells are extremely lazy, so I'm going to decline to open fire until I'm absolutely forced to. He's creeping a bit closer. Lightning dropping some of his 8-kilometer torps through that gap. I'm just going to torp here. You can see that very short reload, 65 seconds. And these are in fact daring torpedoes. So unlike the Lightning's 8-kilometer torpedoes, I have access to the Daring's 10-kilometer torpedoes, which hit for this 16,700 alpha. I do see the Atlanta on the far side, so I have no problem reversing out here. My Lightning decided to smoke up for fun. British destroyers have, of course, that short cooldown, short duration smoke, so I really don't see the point of that. He was neither under fire nor under pressure. The Highland appears to have either reversed out or maybe crashed behind that island, but the fact that I'm still reversing and I don't see him anymore still kind of tells me that he probably backed up. Torps don't find any targets, but you can see that that single quad torpedo tube is already almost back up. Now, as a British destroyer, you can choose between single launch and the narrow quad spread, and that's your only option. I'm going to disengage here. Now, the tribals are fairly fast as far as British destroyers go. A lot of the high-tier British destroyers are kind of on the slow side, but the Cossack, as a tribal class, does get pretty fast and has access to that standard speed boost. As well as the British self-defense hydro. It's a 3-kilometer hydro for ship detection and 3 kilometers as well for surface detection, or for torpedo spawning. So it's a very excellent hydroacoustic search for keeping yourself safe. Now, the Brindisi is also on the other side, so it's mostly just the Highland as the only threat. Lightning decided to smoke and then not push. I don't know why he's afraid of a tier 7 destroyer. Now, the Highland does have that French reload booster and HE resistance, but since the French destroyer doesn't have access to a smoke screen, you can just disengage at will as long as your smoke screen is off cooldown. There's a Lion to be wary of. Don't want to get blasted by that guy. Oh, there's a La Terrible here, so there's a Cossack in the vicinity more than likely. So that makes me a lot more nervous. Now my RPF is currently pointed over there. The Highland decided that he wants to 1 versus team. Just gonna creep forward. I'm looking for a target that's willing to push in. This Nagato might be ideal here, acting as a bit of a forward scout. Oh, there's that Cossack. I'm gonna smoke immediately here since he has a terrible buddy here with him. You can see even at these short distances, there's that Cossack quad. If I just keep reversing, I should be fine to dodge out on those. So I'm just gonna get myself nice and reversed. Helping to put some fire onto this Vinklin. Self-defense hydro obviously coming in to good use here. Now I can't easily make this turn, but the British destroyers do have access to that improved turning radius. As our smokes fade, we're gonna spot each other, which is not something I desire. Especially because he has his buddy over there. So I'm gonna slip away. He did manage to put one extra salvo into me. Didn't end up dumping those torps. There's the terrible torps over there. Don't want him charging at me. Looks like he's turning out though, so should be fine. If he re-engages, he'll probably cut into the center. Actually, he's gonna cut towards his terrible buddy, so just gonna dump some torps. Like I said, the quad is fairly short cooldown. Oh gosh. And that Brindisi is dangerously close. Now since my RPF is switching, I do know that Brindisi is the closest target, so I'm going to take some time, fire off some pot shots to have a fairly good smoke firing range of 2.5. Like all British destroyers, I have that short fuse AP, so faced with a situation like this, more than happy to just switch to AP. Getting some nice full pens there with that short fuse. Brindisi probably torped, so I do have to be careful, but just making use of that short cooldown smoke here. Hope he's blind firing. But my speed boost plus my British acceleration does mean I'm going to get myself out of trouble. He smokes up, but he's still inside his detectability bloom. More than happy to harass him. Last second here now. And there's a terrible there, so I'm obviously in trouble. Hopefully my teammates can push him off of me. Just ducking and dodging with the last of my maneuverability. Oof, that sap. Do manage to slip away with my life, but you can see that 18,000 hit points does not account for very much, and at this point I'm going to have to disengage from this destroyer cluster. I'm anticipating the Terrible continues forward, so since my tubes are up, I'm just going to dump them here. Don't want to give him this cap for free. I don't want to touch that cap because I want that cap to act as a safety indicator and tell me if he moves in potentially. At this point, my adrenaline rush has made my base 66-second reload quite short. I'm down to roughly 90% of my health missing. So I'm sitting at almost full adrenaline rush boost. Surprisingly, the Terrible waits until now to push in. My torps are just now sliding in. He probably dodged them. I have my smoke up, but he can almost certainly alpha me, so I do have to be careful. RPF will tell me though if he's pushing a particular side. Considering his Cossack buddy, he is almost certainly going to be pushing this corner, but I'm not sure. Jean Bart pushing. Now thanks to having access to that custom single spread, he ducks back out, so it looks like he just traveled through. Not sure if he's gonna duck to any particular side, but since I just have these torps so often, why not? Okay, he has fired now. So at this point, I'm gonna smoke up and just try and farm some fires. You can see me playing the scouting role quite a bit, but having engaged with those destroyers quite extensively, haven't done too much in the way of farming fires or anything. You get a first salvo fire. Have to be wary because I'm quite broadside and he could technically blind fire me quite easily. There's some torps sailing past. Oh, and he actually does blind fire, so it's important to stay moving. I do manage to relight my fire. About 15 more seconds on that Cossack, on my smoke, so probably gonna pop speed boost at this point and just depart. One last parting salvo. And now I don't have my smoke. So I do have to be careful. He's on this far side. My team is currently overwhelming that what's left of the enemy flank there, but I am the one holding the line. Probably gonna hold the cap from this corner over here. They're gonna push north, I would imagine. Just gonna make a bit of a spread. I'm gonna let him have the cap at this point because I'm so low. And just stay here behind hard cover. I have 3 more smokes left, so offensively I have several options. The champagne just fired, so I'm gonna smoke up. See if I can get something done. Torps spotted by my hydro in the distance. I was hoping the champagne would fire. Appears to have missed my salvo of torpedoes as well. Oh, he ducked the other way. Now the champagne does have quite accurate rifles at long range, but pushing is not its forte. Just aiming to put superstructure fires in. Using this corner here to defend myself as best I can, and incidentally smoking this Mahan behind me. Okay, now my RPF is pointed there. It's not the Le Terrible, so something is closer than that Jean Bar on the other side. So he's very close to me, probably right on the other side of this rock, considering the Jean Bar is only 7 kilometers away. I'm gonna continue to reverse in, and I can try and use my RPF to torp. Now he too has his self-defense smoke and hydro, but maybe we can catch him off guard. He's right about here. Okay, Jean Bar's now closer. I'm gonna dump into that smoke anyway and contest this cap. This is quite dangerous. He doesn't have RPF, however. If he comes out of the smoke and I'm in his detectability radius, I'm going to be in a bit of trouble, since I'm much lower HP than he is. And I do manage to clip him with one of my singles. It turns out to be the Yugamo rather than the Cossack, so I have no idea where that enemy Cossack actually is. RPF proving its value there. Very excellent tool for the destroyer hunting scouting role. Not the highest damage game. We didn't have too many opportunities to farm, but the Cossack does offer that scout destroyer gameplay, which is really about contesting caps and fighting for these capture zones. Cossack B does pick up my lightning. You do have to be careful here. The lead is not as great as you might think. I don't actually want to push across because I'm so low health. The secondaries could actually kill me. Smoke is pretty useful here. Now I need to stay away from the Georgia because he's going to be a shell trap. Anyone who shoots him might hit me, and at this HP, I'm not particularly ready. to be taking damage. Jean-Parc goes down, and that should allow my teammates to take the cap. Enemy destroyer division is still up, but they're quite far away from me, and I'm gonna just finish up this match by leisurely strolling over to C cap and securing the match. Even in case of emergency where that Alsace suddenly dies and the Georgia suddenly dies to torpedoes, we should be quite fine. Now we did use a bit too much HP, I would say, in this particular match. In the early stages of the game, the game's currently not ticking because we're taking their cap and they're taking our cap. So they're the only ones ticking up right now with this active C cap, but should be quite alright. My team, after all, is about to take B. It looks like the Le Terrible is farming his little butt off to try and stop them. Brindisi is pretty far away. I only have 10-kilometer torps, but he has to really charge at us if he wants to fight at all. So I'm just going to dump these torps, see if he can come into range. My 12-kilometer gun range seems kind of short, but that is honestly the effective range of the Cossack. I'm probably going to wait for him to fire, and then I'm going to fire at this point. I have nothing to lose. See if I can rake up a little more damage. You can see at maximum range, almost. My shells are fairly slow. Shattering on that Brindisi plate. Nice and flat. They actually do pick up that Alsace, so thankfully we are the ones picking up this cap right now. And you can see my torps kind of sailing into range now. Brindisi is almost just dead from shells though, so should be able to quite safely dispatch him, and having taken this C cap, we should be quite secure to 1-cap win. British destroyers have that short fuse AP. I'm actually not sure if the Cossack has access to it as well, since it does predate the rest of the release of the line, but it is quite effective when used properly. 2100 alpha, so nothing particularly special in terms of alpha damage, especially compared to, say, German destroyers, but the short fuse does make it much more usable. Prevents you from getting those over penetrations, which are undesirable. Those two destroyers certainly trying to win the match. I really have to commend their attempt at making a concerted effort to actually play World of Warships. So even though these two guys are on the losing end, they certainly tried their best to attempt to win the game. I feel like maybe Cossack could have fought for this cap more aggressively rather than leaving it to his Le Terrible buddy and the Yugmo that eventually died inside of it, but it is what it is. They certainly gave me quite the beating personally, so commendable effort. 4600 at the very end of the match. You have to remember the Cossack is a scout destroyer, so you're not always going to have a glorious damage farm fest. When your primary targets are the destroyers that you hunt with your guns, and then after that you supplement by farming what fires you can with your smokes on battleships and cruisers and such. Your damage numbers aren't always going to be very high every match. You can obviously have some quite record games, but really the focus of the Cossack is an objective control destroyer, and it is in that role that she excels, just like many of the other British destroyers. Unlike many of the other British destroyers, however, such as say the Daring at tier 10, she is actually quite fast still, so she doesn't suffer from some of the inflexibility caused by their relatively slow speed. If we go to our damage distribution, you can see mostly HE and fire damage for the vast majority of our damage. If you do manage to get torpedoes off, they actually are quite excellent. In this case, the one torpedo clipped a fairly low HP Yugmo. So the torpedoes themselves are excellent. You don't have access to a lot of them at once, but they are individually excellent and they reload quite quickly. Kind of like playing a low-tier destroyer with the low volume of torpedoes that are up quite frequently. The guns are, however, the selling point of the ship. sadly, I don't have time to play another match today, but at this juncture. But that game did exemplify pretty well, in my opinion, how the Cossack tends to play. Now she's a destroyer, so pretty much no armor, nothing special in terms of armor plates, no Italian or Italian-inspired Soviet designs here. So 19mm hull armor and 13mm superstructure. Survivability-wise, as far as tier 8 destroyers go, she's actually fairly light at 18,000 hit points. Now certainly you have more HP than, say, a Kagero hull, Sashio, which is a Kagero hull, for example, sitting at 17,900, but it's really not that much more. So even though the Cossack is a formidable gunfighter, she is fairly lightly built, so you have to keep that in mind. One of the payoffs of having that light HP pool, however, is that you have that excellent 5/5 concealment shared by the Lightning. Now this Captain, this Lightning, does end up being, I think, a bit tankier in comparison. So your techtree counterpart does get that extra 700 HP, but in exchange you have 8 rifles to his 6. This is my Lightning Captain, which is the captain I do use on my Cossack, by the way. The Lightning, however, has that 4-second reload and the dual-purpose battery, so slightly different characteristics. The Cossack's more of a gunboat, the Lightning is more of a flexible design, so that techtree ship ends up being the utilitarian version of the ship, and the Cossack is the kind of scouting, cap contesting version of that. We'll go over that captain build in brief after, but yeah, the selling point of this ship is the concealment combined with the guns. Very formidable alpha damage with those 8 rifles, so even though you have that slightly longer reload, you can deal a lot more damage at once, as you saw when I was tangoing with that enemy Cossack and the Terrible and exchanging fire. That enemy Cossack did quite the number on me, quickly depleting my hit points, and I almost died in that scrap. However, in that scrap, because of the Cossack's excellent consumable set, of that fast-loading British smoke, short-range hydro, and speed boost, I was able to slip away with my 5/5 concealment. Now she has 36 knots base. I think this is with a speed flag. Oh, this is actually with no flags. I could have detonated in that match. Whoops. Her turning circle radius at 610 is fairly pedestrian, but the rudder shift time is excellent at 2.9. So she's a fairly large destroyer with a low hit point pool. So as a result, if you get shot at, you do tend to take a lot of damage, so you have to be careful of that. The key factor to keep in mind is that you get this excellent concealment and good gun power, but low hit point pool, so you end up being a bit of a squishy cannon. So you have to take your fights very selectively. Taking fights like that 2 versus 1 versus the destroyer division is not something I would recommend. Even though it happened to me, it's definitely not something you want to do. Module-wise, pretty standard stuff. If you have a hydroacoustic module, you can use it to extend that self-defense hydro duration. I find that usually the standard hydro is more than enough, however, so I just run with engine room protection in this case. If you have access to a speed boost module, on the other hand, however, the speed boost module is quite excellent, allowing you to push your Cossack to about 38-39 knots for an extended period of time, which is quite nice. Main armaments, engine room protection, torpedo tubes modification. There's actually some argument to be made because the Cossack is such a dedicated gunboat to take turret traverse. Her turret traverse is kind of poor. This is that early to mid-war British 4.7-inch not dual-purpose mount. But personally, I'm taking torpedo tubes just for the little bit of extra speed to pack a little bit of extra punch into those torpedoes. The torpedoes, with their 10-kilometer range, you didn't see me land too many hits there, but they can be quite powerful. In slot 4, you would usually see propulsion module, but as a British destroyer, they already have that built in, so you end up getting to take rudder shift, which contributes to that excellent rudder shift. And last but not least, concealment systems modification 1. I'm not too much of a destroyer player, so I can't go super in-depth for you. I know, generally speaking, what I'm doing, but not exactly going to tell you the ins and outs. I'll leave that to someone more qualified than I am, really just doing a brief review of the Cossack and its general scouting playstyle. Captain-wise, I'm using my 19-point Lightning Captain. So, very simple. Preventative maintenance into last stand, into survivability expert, into concealment expert. Fairly pedestrian destroyer build that you can't go wrong with. At 13 points, followed up with basics fire training. This is a gun-focused destroyer, so improve your guns so you can hunt those enemy destroyers with that combination of 8 rifles and 5.5 detection. And then Adrenaline Rush, and last but not least, RPF for hunting down those DDs. Frequently, I will go BFT into RPF into AR, since AR is not always active, but when you can get it active, like you saw in that last game, you can get your reload on torpedoes and guns to be fairly short, but it's kind of a personal preference thing. Anyhow, like I said, I'm not the world's best destroyer player, so just really a brief overview. I'm not going to keep you here much longer, but hopefully that gave you a bit of more information about the Cossack overall as a destroyer, since she is currently one of the offerings available in this Black Friday set. The Cossack is overall considered to be an excellent tier 8 destroyer, and even a relatively pedestrian destroyer player like myself can make her work. The key points I would say are to remember that she is a scout, so if you're looking for huge damage, probably not a destroyer for you. This is a scrappy cap contesting destroyer that's going to have its shining moments in very brief intervals in the game, and between that have kind of long lulls where you might not necessarily be doing much more than farming battleships with a she inside of your smokes. With that said, I hope you enjoyed, and I will catch you all later. Cheers.